All right. Thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. Of course, I'm the author of Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Partners, and Friends who love a chronic Lyme survivor need to know. And of course, I'm the host of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. Very excited. Typically, we talk about topics that the people addressed in the book are interested in. And also, Elena, the podcast has been very well received by chronic Lyme survivors who are looking for more support from their family members, partners, and friends. You could find the podcast if you're listening. Of course, it's on Apple Podcast and all the usual places where you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple, please go up and give us a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe or give us a thumbs up or make a comment on today's show with Alayna Bellquist. She's a marine scientist. And Elena, we're going to get deep into some topics that we typically haven't spoken about on the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. We're going to be talking about nature. And you're a marine scientist, you're a biologist, and I've spoken to a lot of chronic Lyme survivors who are scared to death of nature for obvious reasons. They were probably bitten by a tick when they went hiking or camping or in the Ozarks or whatever it might have been. I've met so many people. They're afraid of deer. They're afraid of getting reinfected, and it's real, it's logical. But we're going to talk about your approach, which isn't to fear nature, it's to embrace it. So I'm excited to have you on the show. You and I met via Instagram and got to spend a couple of sessions talking to each other and following each other. Before we get deep into the aspects of nature that we're going to talk about, give us a little bit of your story in about a minute or so. Chronic Lyme, where are you? What's your journey been like? And then we're going to be talking about the steps that you took to heal yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. I love how you introduced me. I love it. I'm like beaming over here. Yep. So marine scientist. I'm a very classic Lyme person, and that I was very overachieving, very people pleasing, very go go go. So I live in San Diego. Had a relatively frantic life. At the time I was bitten riding my horse. Been a rider since I was 6 years old. So obviously high risk, very nature oriented. I was knowingly bit, sought treatment, which wasn't sufficient. I was given 2 doxycycline pills, and went on to live my life. And for 3 years, developed little symptoms, which I ignored and wrote off as work stress. And then my world fell apart in 2020, when I became bedridden for a year. And Yep, spent the last 3 years crawling out of bed, literally. And, yeah, what you were saying is I've used a lot of conventional alternative healing methods, mental and emotional work, but for me, the role of nature in my healing was invaluable. It's been the only way I think I healed, and I just want to share that with other Lyme people because fearing nature is, understandable, but I think really dangerous. So,
So two quick questions. So
yeah.
you mentioned you got bit when you were riding a horse. A
Yep.
lot of people don't know. They don't even see a bullseye rash, which is common, especially if you're chronic and you didn't know, and then years later you get diagnosed. How did you know that you were bitten?
I went to take a shower and it was on my stomach.
Hmm.
It was clear as day. It was there. I mean, I had probably bitten many times before by the little tiny nymph ones,
Mhm.
because I would ride and my life was so hectic. I would never change and I would go back to work and I would wear the same shirt that I had been riding my horse in and mucking stalls and doing all the things. Um, and then 9 hours later, I would change. But like I wasn't, and I was not tick aware. I didn't grow up in an area that anyone spoke about Lyme. I grew up on Vancouver Island.
Hmm.
I knew nothing about Lyme, so I had no tick awareness until I moved to Southern California, and it came up a bit more. But yeah, no, it was clear as day. It was on me. It was only on me for 5 hours. I just brushed it right off.
Wow.
Yeah,
And this was in Southern California?
yeah. I got bitten in Rancho Santa Fe, just outside of San Diego.
Wow. I mean, we'll just dispel that myth right there
Right.
that,
Yeah.
nothing happens in Southern California. As a matter of fact, since I published Love, Hope, Lyme, as you know, I've met thousands of people with
Yeah.
Lyme disease all over the world. I've met, and we mentioned this before, I've met an uptick in people in Southern California. As a matter of fact, I did a show with Kenzie Vath, who was recognized by the Global Lyme Alliance recently, and she lives in Los Angeles, and it's all over the place. You
Yep,
know,
there are ticks here. I'd never seen a tick in my life before I moved here. I actually thought they were like this kind of exaggerated little thing. I was like, "Oh, what's the big deal?" And then I moved here and I'm like, "Oh man, they are real."
yes,
You do not have to leave the city to find them very far here. Like you can go 20 minutes into sage scrub
yeah,
and they are very much present.
wow. All right, so I just want to ask you one quick question before we get
Yeah.
back to you mentioned you're a horse, a person, an equestrian. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us how important that is in your life.
Before I haven't ridden in 3 years since I got sick. I'm still recovering. But I remember in the years before I got sick, I said out loud, I would die if I couldn't ride. It was my identity. I didn't want to know a life without horses. I was a marine scientist and a horseback rider. And that was my and a like a good wife and all the things. But yeah, it wasn't my job, but it was every minute I wasn't working, I wanted to be on the back of a horse. So, I've just been really nature and animal oriented my whole life, and so it makes sense that my hobby, involves horses and loving animals and training horses and rehabilitating horses, and it was just I've been a horse girl since I was, like, 6, like, there was no limit to how much time I could spend around them, so, yeah, that was ironic and a bit brutal.
Yeah, I live in Northern Virginia, so I broadcast a show just outside of Washington D.C., and I live not far from Middleburg,
Okay.
Virginia, which is one of the horse equestrian
Oh,
epicenters of the country as well.
yeah.
And it's not far from Loudoun County, which ironically is a ground zero for Lyme disease as well. All right, so as a biologist, let's get back to nature here. What principles from nature did you use to heal your persistent Lyme?
Yeah, like it wasn't a thing that happened quickly because I got sick and I was so new. I just kind of was like, okay, antibiotics. And I took the more conventional method and just I thought 10 days on antibiotics was going to cure me. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a quick little take 2 weeks off work and then so my use of nature has evolved over years of illness. And I try and think about it in two ways. Like because I have studied the natural world and I have worked in fisheries for 20 years, I look at it like there's two ways, like literally and metaphorically. So when I looked at the principles of nature, which I knew to be a given, sometimes I forget that a lot of people haven't spent years having the privilege of being able to study nature. And nature, I know because of so much studying and witnessing it firsthand in my job, that nature always heals given the chance. Nature is inherently resilient and heals from devastation that you wouldn't even grasp. I mean, and I've seen this in I'm not, in my 40s, so I've worked long enough to be able to see species that were not really supposed to recover given the right time and the right attention. And so I said, okay, well, I know I'm nature, and these are also principles that a lot of people don't are not we're not really taught in greater society. I know there's no separation between myself and nature. I grew up in a very nature my Vancouver
Mhm.
Island is very like there's nature everywhere. So, and my family taught me this. Um, I know there's no distinction between me and nature. I am an extension of nature. I am part of nature. Those principles apply to me too. So I went, okay, if species like white sharks here or rockfish stocks can be like in such terrible shape and recover, that principle applies to me too. That I didn't realize was a unique thing. I just kind of knew that, but I didn't really know that that wasn't like a common knowledge, a common belief in the Lyme community, and that's why I love talking about that. And then the sort of I used so that would be like more like I guess like metaphorical or whatever, but in terms of actually using nature, I I I I didn't shy away. I dove in. I took my shoes off now in nature. I did probably all the things that you're not supposed that Lyme people be like, "What are you doing?" I started getting more in nature. Like I hike with bare feet now and I'm like laying on the rocks and I'm laying in the grass. And I know this is triggering stuff to talk about for Lyme people. Um, as much swimming as possible. I started swimming in the ocean all the time. And because there's a lot of science, I judged this stuff at first, but there is a lot of science to back the healing properties of doing that, especially from like your nervous system. My nervous system was 100% fried when I was bitten. I was running, running, chronic anxiety, chronic racing heart. My stomach was always in knots. I also had babesia, which is probably why. Um, but sitting on the earth, calming my nerves, taking the time to look at the stars. Like I know this, it's so basic, but I never looked at the stars before and like sat there and looked at the stars. But I studied the natural world, but I was so in the computer and I was so
Yeah,
in, that way. So yeah, I started using it directly by doing those things. And I just, it's hard, it's hard when you're a person whose life has been changed by a little tiny a thing the size of a poppy seed.
absolutely. I just want to remind people too, before I ask you a follow-up
Yeah,
question, my book, Love, Hope, Lyme, of course,
yeah.
it's free. The e-version is free for chronic Lyme survivors. All you need to do, reach out to me via Facebook or LinkedIn. In my book, Love, Hope, Lyme, one of the chapters, we talk about some of these natural type of healing approaches. Someone who I interviewed during the writing of the book said that he noticed that his symptoms would dissipate when he
Yes.
was out in the sun,
Yep.
right? He'd be inside and whatever, afraid to go out, or wherever it might be. And then he started noticing that whenever he was out in sunlight, that he felt better. And
Yes.
the some of the pain and some of the arthritic symptoms and some of the other anxiety symptoms just kind of melted away. Yeah, and let's also talk here. You're not being reckless. You didn't go up to a deer and hug a deer. I mean, you're not stupid, but you got out there and took advantage of. And I like the way you said that nature heals itself, right? And nature is resilient. I hate using the word resilient for other reasons, but nature wants to come back and our bodies want to do the same. Do you believe that?
Absolutely. If you look at it from like my career perspective, when a species is struggling, the thing that we do is we don't necessarily like target. If you want to bring a species back from depleted numbers, you work on the ecosystem. You work on the things that depleted its resiliency, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So like if there's pollution problems or problems in the food chain, warming oceans, whatever it is, those are the things that you address so that the species can flourish. And that was a principle. I was like, what are the things that are attacking my inherent ability to heal? People pleasing, never saying no, running 20 hours, like, 12, 14-hour days nonstop, perfectionism. Those are my pollution and overfishing and warming. That was the
Wow.
connection I made. And
Yeah.
yeah, those are the things that made me not capable of healing.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it too.
Yeah.
So again, my book is called Love, Hope, Lyme: What Family Members, Partners, and Friends Who Love a Chronic Lyme Survivor Need to Know. Now, your husband is a biologist,
Yeah.
and he's also a hunter fisher, kind
Yep.
of a guy. He taught you some things about Lyme, and he doesn't have Lyme, and I don't have Lyme. In my opening to my book, I'm very clear that I've never been bitten, as far as I know. I don't have Lyme. I don't know any of the things that anybody who I've interviewed who's a Lyme survivor need to go through. But I was very committed to a particular person who had Lyme, which led me to going into this world and understanding, so that again, family members, partners, and friends would understand what you're going through. Uh, your husband, how did he facilitate your healing in nature?
I think I would have died without him. There were days
Mm,
where he had to feed me, literally, and
mm,
I like words diminish my appreciation for him getting me through this. It was the height of COVID.
mm.
We weren't leaving. So he basically saved my life. Not basically, he did. Um, what he taught me was, so he grew up here. He has been, he's had ticks on him. He's been bitten by ticks. He definitely been exposed to the Lyme bacteria. And he has such a beautiful headspace. He's like easygoing, happy, self-assured. He's a good, calm dude. And I think that is why he's been fine. He can be bitten and he's fine. And when I was bitten, I was not fine. I was a stressed out head case.
Yeah.
And so I looked at him and I'm like, I need to be more like that.
So what'd you
So
do? What did you do? Well,
I
the
had,
nature and stuff is there
yeah.
anything you did together, or was that just an
Yeah,
observation
well,
of,
he took me out. I mean, I couldn't drive. I was too sick to drive. So he would take me out and hold my arm and we would go and sit on rocks together because I called sitting on rocks my ibuprofen.
hmm,
Like what you were saying, that person you interviewed. I couldn't go in the sun because of the antibiotics, which was a
okay.
whole nightmare living in Southern California. I can't even, uh, that's really tough to describe how difficult that is here. But he would find me little shady places and carve out a spot on a rock, and we would sit and I would take my ibuprofen, which was sitting on the rocks. So he was, literally taking me to places to be in nature.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
So people are afraid to death of ticks
Yeah.
if they have Lyme disease, particularly chronic Lyme disease. And, like we mentioned before, the tick has become the enemy, and rightly so. When I wrote the book, I did a lot of research on the value of ticks, right? And there's none. I mean, opossums supposedly eat ticks. Chickens eat a lot of ticks. I've come to learn that chickens eat more ticks than opossums do. But otherwise, there's not a whole lot of value with them. If you read articles that are happening in Maine, the moose are getting destroyed by ticks. And I have friends who are hunters in central Pennsylvania who said, whenever they kill a deer, they see quarter size, pockets of ticks all through their head. So there's not a whole lot of value, but there's things that you're more afraid of, you were telling me, than ticks. What are those things, and why do you not resent or hate even, the Lyme infected tick that bit you?
I don't think nature makes mistakes.
Mm,
So I don't think ticks are useless. I think they have a place because I don't believe nature makes mistakes. And again, I own that this is very triggering for people with Lyme. Um, the problems come when we
yeah,
mess up the balance. Nature has a fine balance and we mess it up. So like we gotta look in the mirror at that. That's a whole other thing. No, I don't hate that tick because my life was so chaotic when I was bitten. I needed a wake up call. I was not getting the wake up call. I was doing more. I thought, okay, I'm being successful. I'm climbing the ladder. Okay, society's telling me I'm doing a great job. My heart races 20 hours a day. Oh, okay. Like, I guess that's the cost of success. I needed the wake up call of the century, which this tick handed to me on a silver platter. um, if it weren't for that, I would still be living the way I was living, which was not the way. I don't believe the way we're intended to live. It's the way we're taught. Society reinforced that lifestyle. I've done enough work now to realize like I don't think goals and achievements are the design of this whole thing, which I used to believe. I am here to achieve goals.
right.
That is a paradigm shift. I think now we're here to experience joy, full stop. That's a massive statement to make, and I only have that statement because of that. I only feel that because of that tick. That's a big deal. So I'm grateful for that tick.
You
Yeah.
you give a great answer here, and I did a show with a gentleman named Greg Kirk, and Greg is the author of a book called The Gratitude Curve, and he also came up with the six steps of healing
Mm,
from Lyme disease. And we did a show, one of the previous episodes of the Love Hope Lyme podcast. Anybody listening can go search it. And one of the final steps, of course, is acceptance. Right, is
yeah.
accepting the fact that you have Lyme disease, and what does it now mean in your life going forward?
Yeah.
So, and there's a great deal of acceptance. And I believe that, and I don't get too spiritual here on the Love Hope Line podcast, because that's really not the intent of the show. The intent, of course, is to have people around you, your family members, partners, and friends, understand what this disease is, why you've done things that you've done, how you can heal, things along those lines. But talk about this for a second, Elena. Again, we're talking to Alayna Bellquist. I want to reflect back on your answer and go a little bit deeper. it sounds like you've accepted the fact that you have Lyme disease, of course, and you're shaking your head. I mean, obviously, I know you've accepted. Talk about what that means to your life now and moving forward.
I've accepted that I was infected. I don't accept this as a lifetime diagnosis. That's a choice I make. That's up to people who are. Uh, a lot of things the medical community tells you as a given are not true. So I don't really care if the medical community says this is for life. Um, I Yes, I've had Lyme for years. Yes, it was late stage and chronic, absolutely, but I don't accept it as a life sentence. I believe so firmly in my body. I believe in my body more than that diagnosis. Um, I think I forgot the first part of your
No,
question.
that's a great
Yeah,
answer. The question was basically,
yeah.
what is your life going to look like
Oh,
now that
right.
you've accepted? So you talked about, and you give a great story that I really didn't have a line of questioning to ask for, but that you are a high achieving person. You worked really hard. You're talking about go, 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 right? And then, you get bit, and then you in 2020 you got more. The impact of the illness had more of a play on you, so you've had to shift who Elena was from before to who Elena is going to be, hopefully, for the next 40 years of your life. Right. So the question was, what are you doing to accept that? And what is some of your advice for the Lyme survivors listening to today's Love, Hope, Lyme podcast on how they can also get to the acceptance stage? And, like you just said, you can live a great life.
Absolutely. My life is better
Hmm.
despite pain a lot. My life is better. I've chosen through a lot of work to shift from victim to ownership. Like I radically own what happened to me. That tick was still on me because I was living such a crazy life because I never changed after riding my horse. That is on me. You know, wanting to be a people pleaser and an overachiever is on me. So that's like pretty radical acceptance and responsibility. But in owning it, it's up to me how the direction and this goes. If I were to stay in like, man, this like happened to me, not for me, then I lose control. And I want control of the next 40, 50 years, maybe 60. That'd be amazing. So my husband's grandmother's 98 and she's great. So,
Wow.
I want control. And it makes me live a better life daily still because I still have pain daily, right? So I'm like, okay, I would push through. My overachieving tendencies are holding on strong. Like I would do this all day, every day. And I've written a book and I'm da 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 da. And the pain shows up and it's like, you need to chill out, girl. You need to slow down today.
Yeah.
That's awesome because I wouldn't do it if it weren't for Lyme.
So I got one more question for you.
Yeah.
Again, we're talking today with Alayna Bellquist. Once again, to remind people, the e-version of my book, Love, Hope, Lyme, is always available free. It's been available free from day one, Alayna, for chronic Lyme survivors. Just reach out to me via Facebook or LinkedIn, which is usually where I hang out. And also on Instagram as well. I don't really look at my messages as much as I should. And I'd be happy to send you a free e-version. Before I ask you for your final bits of advice for family members, partners, and friends, excuse me, I want to ask you a question about your relationship with horses moving forward. So again, you talked about how important it was to be a rider and equestrian, and then I said you haven't ridden in years because of the disease. If you don't mind, talk about what your relationship with horses will be moving forward.
Horses will always be there. And I think people that have ridden for their whole life kind of know that. Like I had to stop when I was at grad school because I was poor and had no
Mm.
time. Um, So I know I took a few-year break when I was doing grad school, and they were waiting for me. So I know
Mm.
they will be waiting for me, and I will approach it differently, not so like must be the best, must da 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 da. Like the I that my that's the approach I had to horse riding too. Got to be the best, do the most, do the most. And now it'll be a lot slower and more present with the horse. And that's I don't feel yeah, I do. It sounds a bit harsh. I'm a little indifferent about not riding right now, and
Okay.
that's even surprising to me as a person who has spent thousands and thousands of hours in a saddle. But they will be there,
Yes.
and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. I mean, I love horses as well. Because I live near horse country. My daughter, when she was younger, used to take her to horseback riding lessons. And
Yeah.
I always thought that was something that she was going to pursue to the end. Alayna Bellquist, thank you so much. I appreciate you reaching out. This has been, again, I could go so much deeper in some of the topics, but we like to keep the show to 20, 25 minutes so that people can consume it and move on. People can find you on Instagram. You're out there. We'll also provide ways to connect with you as well. Give us some of your final thoughts on what do you want family members and friends to know uh, if they are supporting someone who has chronic, persistent, or long-term Lyme.
I didn't tell my family for months. So, um, you never know what someone's going through. I
Mm,
hid this for months. It was COVID. I was able to just hide it. So that's, you never know what someone's going through. Um, and when I finally told my family, they were like, "We would have liked to know this." Rightly so.
mhm,
Uh, I guess it's that I'm not looking to them for answers. I don't
mm,
want, and that's very people are kind of, well, call my mom and like I'm very closed about pain, but if I do squeak out, I'm having a painful day, I don't need an answer. My mom hasn't lived this. She doesn't have the answer. Moms are amazing and she has a lot of answers. But my sister or whoever it is, they might want to try and take the pain from me and they can't. But they can just be there. It's like, just be there, and my family is, I mean, they want to be there, I don't let them be there enough for me. So, don't try and fix it, you don't have to have answers, you can be there simply answering the phone, being there, going and doing something in a Lyme-friendly way, like, go if all your Lyme family member can do is sit on a rock, go sit on a rock together.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Once again, I want to thank Alayna Bellquist. My name is Fred Diamond. Once again, the book, Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Partners, and Friends Who Love a Chronic Lyme Survivor Need to Know is available on Amazon. If you'd like a signed copy, reach out to me again via Facebook or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to do that as well. And the PDF, the e-version, is always free. Once again, Alayna, thank you so much for sharing your story. My name is Fred Diamond. This is the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast.